I've been sitting here for hours now, staring at this blank screen, wondering how the hell I even got to this point. I used to think my marriage was solid. We've been together for 10 years, married for 6 of them, and I was sure we had one of those unshakable bonds. You know, the kind of love that makes people say, they're perfect for each other. That was us, me and Amanda. Or so I thought. If you told me a year ago that I'd be here, questioning everything, I would have laughed in your face. Amanda is beautiful, smart, and a master at everything she does. She works as a project manager in a tech company, always busy, always making big moves. I admired that about her. Hell, I still do. But lately, things have been different. It's hard to put into words, but the air in our house feels heavier, like something is hanging between us that neither of us wants to talk about. At first, I thought it was just stress from work. Amanda's job demands a lot, and I figured it was wearing her down. I mean, we all go through phases, right? I told myself it was normal. But deep down, I've had this nagging feeling. I started noticing little things, how her phone is always glued to her hand now, how she started dressing a little differently, more stylish and put together, even on weekends when we were just chilling at home. And then, of course, there's the sudden work trips. I'm not the jealous type. Never have been. I trusted her. God, I wanted to trust her. But that's the funny thing about trust, once you start questioning it, everything seems like a sign. I told myself I was overthinking it. I mean, it's Amanda. She's not the kind of person who would ever betray me. Right? A couple of months ago, things started getting weirder. Amanda was coming home later and later. She always had some excuse: work ran late, an emergency meeting, or she had to stay behind to help a colleague. I tried not to let it bother me, but when those late nights started happening more often than not, I couldn't shake this feeling that something was off. One night, I asked her about it, casually, over dinner. "Babe, you've been working a lot lately. Everything okay at the office?" She barely looked up from her plate, brushing it off. "Yeah, just busy. You know how it is. We've got this huge project launch coming up, and everything's on a tight deadline." I nodded, not wanting to push. But the thing is, Amanda isn't just busy. She's distant. It's like we're living in the same house, but she's miles away. The conversations we used to have, they've turned into small talk. Surface-level stuff. No depth. I miss her, even though she's right there in front of me. One night, we were sitting on the couch, watching Netflix, and she got a text. She glanced at her phone and immediately flipped it over on the coffee table, face down. My heart sank. Something about that little gesture, it felt wrong. Like she was hiding something. I wanted to ask. I should have asked. But I didn't. Instead, I stayed quiet, telling myself that I was overthinking it. That's what love does to you, right? It makes you blind to the signs, makes you doubt your gut when everything inside you is screaming that something isn't right. A few days later, I tried to get us back to normal. I suggested we go out for a date night, just the two of us. Amanda smiled, that same beautiful smile that had me falling for her years ago, and agreed. For a moment, I felt like maybe I was just paranoid, like things would be okay. But when the night came, she canceled last minute, said she had to meet a friend. It was always something. I don't know why, but that night I couldn't sleep. I laid in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was just being insecure or if my marriage was actually slipping away from me. That's when the thought crossed my mind. Was there someone else? It wasn't long after that sleepless night that I started noticing patterns, things I couldn't ignore anymore. Like, her phone. I realized she never left it lying around anymore. She used to be careless with it, leaving it on the kitchen counter, in the bathroom, or wherever. But now, it was always with her, like an extension of her hand. She'd be texting late into the night, sometimes stepping out of the room when I walked in. I tried to convince myself that it wasn't a big deal. Maybe work was just crazy, like she said. Maybe I was being paranoid. But there was this feeling, this knot in my stomach that wouldn't go away. One weekend, I suggested we take a break. Let's go up to the cabin, just you and me. Get away from everything for a couple of days. What do you think? She hesitated. I saw it. I felt it. I can't, Nate. I've got too much going on at work. Maybe another time. It was a pattern. Every time I tried to bring us back together, she pulled away. I didn't know what to do with that. Was it me? Was she just tired of us? Then, things started happening with our friends, specifically with Eric and Jenna. Eric has been my best friend since college. He's the guy I can count on, you know. We've been through everything together, drunken nights, jobs, breakups, you name it. And Jenna? She's his wife. Sweet, kind, the kind of person who never has a bad word to say about anyone. We all hung out regularly, double dates, barbecues, the usual. But lately, Amanda had been weird about hanging out with them. She'd make excuses not to go, or if we did go, she'd be quieter than usual. Distant. Distracted. I didn't think much of it until one night when Eric pulled me aside after dinner. He looked uncomfortable, like there was something on his mind, but he didn't want to say it. Everything okay with you and Amanda, man? I blinked, caught off guard. Yeah, why? He shrugged, clearly not wanting to push too hard. I don't know, you guys just seem off. Jenna mentioned Amanda seems stressed lately. I laughed it off, trying to keep it light. Yeah, work's been killing her. But after that conversation, I couldn't stop thinking about it. If Eric and Jenna were picking up on something, maybe I wasn't imagining it. Maybe I wasn't just being insecure. And yet, the idea that Amanda could be hiding something big, from me? I couldn't wrap my head around it. This was my wife. The woman I'd built a life with. We were supposed to be solid. Unbreakable. But when I looked at her now, I wasn't so sure anymore. After that conversation with Eric, things in my mind shifted. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was slipping through my fingers, my marriage, my life, everything. I found myself watching Amanda more closely, analyzing every word, every glance, every small action. It felt wrong to do it, but I couldn't help it. I needed answers, even though I wasn't sure what the hell I was looking for. One Friday night, Amanda came home late again. I was sitting in the living room, waiting for her, mindlessly flipping through TV channels but not really watching. When she finally walked in, it was close to midnight, and she looked different. Hair perfectly done, makeup still intact, wearing a dress I hadn't seen before. Hey, I said, keeping my voice calm, trying not to let the tension show. Long day. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Yeah, really long. I'm exhausted. That was it. No explanation. No details. Just, tired. She walked past me, kissed me on the forehead, and headed straight for the shower. The sound of water filled the house, but all I could hear was the silence between us. I stared at her phone, which she had left on the coffee table for once. My heart was pounding. I felt like a creep just thinking about going through her messages. I'd never been that guy, the kind of person who sneaks behind their partner's back. But there it was, right in front of me, tempting me like an open door into her secret world. I hesitated, hands shaking. What if I found something? What if I didn't? And then, as if the universe itself was messing with me, her phone lit up. A message from someone named B. I froze. Who the hell was B? I didn't have to unlock the phone to read the message. It was right there on the screen, haunting me. Tonight was perfect. Can't wait for next time. My stomach dropped. Every rational thought I had screamed at me to stop, to not jump to conclusions. But how could I not? That message, her late nights, the way she'd been distant, it all clicked into place, like pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to solve. I sat there, staring at her phone like it was a ticking bomb. She was still in the shower. I could confront her, right now. Demand answers. But instead, I just froze. My mind went blank, caught between disbelief and rage. I didn't know what to do. I turned off the TV and went to bed. I lay there in the dark, listening to the sound of her moving around in the bathroom, thinking about B, and what the hell perfect meant. I didn't ask her anything that night. I couldn't. Not yet. The next few days were unbearable. That message from B was stuck in my head, replaying over and over again like a broken record. Every time I looked at Amanda, I felt sick to my stomach. I wanted to confront her, to demand to know who the hell this B was and what was going on. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. It was like I was paralyzed, frozen between my fear of hearing the truth and the hope that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't what it looked like. So instead, I kept quiet. I tried to act normal, but my mind was running 100 miles an hour, analyzing everything Amanda did. Every text she sent, every time she left the house, every smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. It was driving me insane. One night, we were having dinner. It was quiet, too quiet. Normally we'd talk about our days, laugh at stupid things, but now it felt like we were just there. I stared at her, wondering how I missed the signs. Was she always this distant? Had I been too caught up in my own world to notice when she started pulling away? "You're quiet tonight," Amanda said, glancing up at me from her plate. I shrugged, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just tired, I guess." She gave me a small smile, one that used to feel comforting, but now just felt hollow. "Yeah, me too." That's when I decided I couldn't do this anymore. I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay when it clearly wasn't. I needed to know. After dinner, Amanda said she was heading out to meet a friend. It was the third time that week. She always had someone to meet, some reason to be out. I watched her get ready, fixing her hair, putting on lipstick, the whole thing. The minute she left, I grabbed my jacket and my keys. I had no plan, no idea what I was doing. All I knew was that I needed answers. I drove around for a bit, my mind racing. What if I was wrong? What if there was no affair, and I was just overthinking everything? But that message from B echoed in my mind, fueling my anger. Eventually, I found myself outside Jenna and Eric's house. I didn't know why I went there, but Eric was the only person I could talk to about this. My best friend. He'd know what to say, how to help me figure this out. I knocked on the door, trying to keep it together. Eric answered, surprised to see me. "Nate? What's up, man? You okay?" I stepped inside, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. "I think Amanda's cheating on me." Eric's face went pale. He didn't say anything for a second, just stared at me like I'd slapped him. "What makes you think that?" I told him about the late nights, the changes, and finally, the message from B. As I talked, I could see something shift in Eric's expression. It wasn't just shock, it was something else. Like he knew more than he was letting on. When I finished, he let out a long breath and looked away, avoiding my eyes. "Look, Nate, maybe you should talk to her. Get it out in the open. You don't want to jump to conclusions." His response felt off, like he was holding something back. But before I could push him, Jenna walked into the room, smiling as she greeted me. "Hey, Nate. Everything okay?" I forced a smile, my head spinning. "Yeah, just catching up with Eric." Jenna nodded, though her eyes flickered between us like she could sense the tension. "Well, if you need to talk, we're here for you, okay?" I thanked them and left, but the whole drive home, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. Eric's reaction, it wasn't what I expected. He seemed nervous. Like he knew something I didn't. And that's when it hit me. Maybe this wasn't just about Amanda. The ride home from Eric's felt like a blur. I was trying to make sense of everything, Amanda's strange behavior, that message from B, and now Eric's reaction. It didn't sit right with me. Eric and I had been through everything together. He was the one person I thought I could rely on no matter what, but tonight, something about the way he looked at me made my skin crawl. By the time I got home, it was late. Amanda still wasn't back. The house felt cold, empty. I sat down on the couch and stared at my phone, half hoping she'd text me, tell me she was coming home. But there was nothing. I don't know what came over me, but I started thinking about everything, our marriage, the life we'd built together, and how it all started to feel like a lie. My gut told me there was more to this than just late nights and secretive texts. So, I decided to do something I never thought I'd do. I went looking for answers. Real answers. Her laptop was sitting on the kitchen counter, and I knew she rarely used it anymore. She was always on her phone. But maybe, just maybe, there was something on there that could explain all of this. I opened it up, and to my surprise, there was no password. I hesitated for a second, feeling guilty. This wasn't me, I didn't want to be the kind of guy who snoops around. But I needed to know. I scrolled through her emails, work stuff mostly. Nothing jumped out at me until I saw a series of old messages to Jenna. I clicked on them, expecting to see the usual chat about dinner plans or catching up over wine. But as I read through, my heart started racing. "I don't know what to do, Jen. I think I'm falling for him." I froze. It's not like that with Nate anymore. He's a good guy, but this, it feels different. I'm scared. There it was. Right there in front of me. Amanda had feelings for someone else. And the worst part? Jenna knew. My stomach turned, and I had to reread the message just to make sure I wasn't imagining it. Falling for him. Who? Was it this B? Was it someone else? I kept reading, my heart pounding in my chest. There were other messages too, but they were vague, hinting at feelings she couldn't control, emotions she wasn't ready to admit out loud. And all this time, Jenna knew. She never said a word to me. I had spent hours, days, talking to Eric and Jenna about my marriage, pouring my heart out, and they just let me. I closed the laptop, my hands shaking. I felt betrayed, by Amanda, by Jenna. But there was still a missing piece to the puzzle. Who was this guy? Who was B? My mind was racing, and I felt like I was spiraling. An hour later, Amanda came home, her usual smile plastered on her face. She looked tired, but there was a lightness to her, like she'd had a good time. "Hey, you're still up," she said, tossing her purse on the counter. "Yeah," I muttered, trying to sound normal. "Couldn't sleep." She walked over, kissed me on the cheek, and headed upstairs to the bedroom like nothing was wrong. Like there wasn't a storm brewing inside me. I watched her go, and I knew. I knew I couldn't keep this up. Something had to give. I needed to confront her, to get the truth out. But not tonight. I wasn't ready. Not yet. As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, one thought kept running through my mind: was my best friend hiding something from me, too? I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the messages. "I'm falling for him." Her words played on a loop in my head, taunting me. And the worst part was knowing Jenna had been a part of this. My mind kept going back to that conversation with Eric. The way he dodged my questions, the strange look in his eyes, the way Jenna had smiled at me like everything was fine. I woke up early the next morning, heart pounding, a knot of dread tightening in my chest. I couldn't keep pretending. This was eating me alive, and I knew if I didn't confront Amanda, I'd lose my mind. But I wasn't ready to face her just yet. I needed more. I needed the full picture. So, I did something that felt both desperate and wrong. I reached out to a friend of mine who worked in IT. I explained the situation, told him I needed help recovering deleted messages from Amanda's phone. He didn't ask too many questions, just told me to send the phone over and he'd get it done. Amanda was in the shower when I took her phone from the nightstand. My hands were shaking as I slid it into my bag, my heart pounding so hard I thought she might hear it through the walls. I dropped the phone off with my friend and then spent the rest of the day in a haze. My stomach twisted with a sick mix of guilt and anticipation. I didn't know what I was hoping to find. Maybe a part of me wanted to be wrong. Maybe I wanted to find out it was all some misunderstanding, that Amanda wasn't cheating, and I was just losing my grip on reality. But deep down, I knew. I knew. That night, Amanda came home late again. I didn't say much, just pretended to be tired and went to bed early. She didn't even notice the missing phone, or if she did, she didn't care. The next day, my friend called. "It's done," he said, his voice low. "You sure you want to see this?" I drove over in silence, my heart in my throat. When I got there, he handed me a folder with the recovered messages. I couldn't even open it at first. I just stared at it, knowing that whatever was inside would change everything. Finally, I took a deep breath and opened the folder. And there it was. Message after message between Amanda and Eric. "I can't stop thinking about you. Last night was amazing. I don't know how we're going to keep doing this. We have to be more careful. Nate is starting to notice things. My world shattered. My best friend. The guy I trusted more than anyone else in my life, he was the one. Eric." It hit me like a freight train. The secret glances, the weird tension when we all hung out, Jenna's knowing smiles. They'd all been lying to me. Amanda and Eric were having an affair right under my nose, and everyone knew. I felt sick. Betrayal flooded my veins, choking me. I couldn't believe it. Amanda, my wife, had been sneaking around with Eric, the one person I thought I could trust above anyone. I stared at the messages, feeling the room spin around me. All those nights she said she was with a friend, all the late work meetings, it had been Eric. He had been right there, smiling in my face, pretending like he cared, all while sleeping with my wife. I don't even remember leaving my friend's place. The next thing I knew, I was sitting in my car, parked outside Eric's house, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. I had no plan. No idea what I was going to do. All I knew was that I needed to confront him. I couldn't keep this bottled up any longer. I got out of the car, marched up to his front door, and knocked. Hard. My heart was racing, my mind spinning with everything I wanted to say, everything I wanted to do. Eric opened the door, and the second he saw my face, he knew. "Eric," I said, my voice low, shaking with rage. "You've been sleeping with my wife." The look on Eric's face when I said those words, "You've been sleeping with my wife," was one I'll never forget. His eyes widened, his mouth opened slightly, and for a split second, I saw fear flash across his face. It was quick, but it was there, and it only fueled the fire burning inside me. "Nate, listen," he started, stepping outside, his hands up like he was trying to calm me down. "Don't," I snapped, my voice trembling. "Don't even try to explain. I've seen the messages, Eric. I know." His shoulders slumped, and the guilt washed over his face. He knew there was no way out of this. For a second, I thought he might deny it, try to lie his way out, but instead, he just sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I didn't want you to find out like this." "Like this?" I practically shouted, my fists clenched at my sides. How the hell did you think I was going to find out? You were going to keep sneaking around behind my back forever? He winced, looking down at the ground like he couldn't face me. It wasn't supposed to happen, man. I swear. Not supposed to happen. I echoed, my voice rising with every word. You were cheating with my wife, Eric. My wife. And you're telling me it wasn't supposed to happen? What the hell does that even mean? He didn't have an answer for me. He just stood there, looking pathetic, while I stood there, my whole world crumbling. I wanted to hit him, to beat him senseless for what he'd done. But I didn't. I wasn't that guy. As much as I hated him in that moment, I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of losing control. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. How long? I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. Eric hesitated, glancing around as if the answer might be hiding somewhere in the air between us. A few months. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Months? I whispered. How could you do this to me, man? You were my best friend. I trusted you. I know, he said quickly, his voice cracking. I screwed up. It's the worst mistake I've ever made. I wanted to scream at him that it wasn't just a mistake. A mistake is spilling coffee, locking your keys in your car. This was a betrayal on a level I never thought I'd experience. This was the deliberate act of tearing apart everything I thought I had with Amanda, with Eric, with all of them. I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. You really think you can just say, sorry, and we'll be good? You're unbelievable. Eric took a step closer, reaching out like he wanted to fix it somehow. Nate, listen, Don't touch me. I shouted, stepping back. You don't get to act like you care. Not after this. He stopped, hands in the air again, eyes wide. I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm not. But it wasn't. I don't know how it got this far. Amanda and we didn't mean for this to happen. Hearing her name out of his mouth made my blood boil. You didn't mean for this to happen. You chose this, Eric. Both of you. Every time you were together, you made that choice. And now, you're going to stand here and tell me it wasn't supposed to happen? He didn't respond. What could he say? We stood there in silence for a moment, the weight of everything crashing down on both of us. I couldn't believe I was standing there, face to face with the man who'd been sleeping with my wife, the person I considered my brother. What about Jenna? I asked suddenly, the thought hitting me like a ton of bricks. Does she know? Eric's face twisted in pain. She knows, something. But not everything. Of course not, I muttered. Because you've been lying to her, too. Just like you've been lying to me. To everyone. He didn't say anything, and I could see the guilt eating away at him. But it didn't matter. Nothing he could say would undo what he'd done. I can't believe you, I said, my voice breaking. I don't even know who you are anymore. He flinched, like my words physically hurt him, but I didn't care. I was done. There was nothing left to say. I'm out, I said finally, turning to leave. You and Amanda. You deserve each other. I walked away before he could say anything else, before he could try to fix something that was way beyond repair. I got in my car and drove, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard I thought I might break it. And as I drove, the reality of it all settled in. Amanda. Eric. The people I trusted most in this world, they had betrayed me in the worst possible way. I drove around aimlessly for what felt like hours, my mind racing and my heart shattered. It didn't feel real, like this had to be some twisted nightmare I couldn't wake up from. But it was real. The people I loved and trusted the most had torn my life apart, and now I was left with the wreckage. I didn't go home right away. I couldn't face Amanda, not yet. I didn't know what I'd say, what I'd do. I parked by the beach, staring out at the waves crashing against the shore, trying to breathe, trying to calm the storm raging inside me. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and for a split second, I thought about ignoring it. But then I pulled it out. It was a text from Amanda. "Hey, I'll be home in a bit. Can we talk?" I stared at the screen, my stomach churning. She had no idea I knew. Not yet. She was probably planning some half-assed excuse, trying to keep the lie going. I thought about calling her, confronting her over the phone. But no. I needed to do this in person. I needed to see her face when she realized her perfect little secret was out. I texted her back, "Yeah, we need to talk." I drove home, the tension building with every passing minute. My mind kept replaying the texts I'd seen between her and Eric. All the lies, the secrecy, the betrayal. How long had she been planning to keep this going? How long had she been lying to my face while sneaking around with him? When I walked into the house, Amanda was already there, sitting at the kitchen table, looking anxious. She glanced up at me when I came in, but there was something off about her expression. Like she knew something was wrong, but didn't know what. "Hey," she said, her voice a little too soft, a little too sweet. "You okay?" I dropped my keys on the counter and stared at her for a long moment, trying to find the words. Trying to keep from completely losing it. "You need to tell me the truth, Amanda," I said, my voice low and controlled. "Right now." Her face went pale. What are you talking about?" I could feel the rage boiling just beneath the surface, but I forced myself to stay calm. I wasn't going to let her twist this into something it wasn't. "I know, Amanda. I know about you and Eric." Her eyes widened, and for a second, she looked like a deer caught in headlights. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, clearly trying to figure out what to say. But there was no way out now. She was trapped. "Nate," she started, her voice shaky. Don't," I interrupted, holding up a hand. "Don't you dare try to lie to me. I saw the messages. I know everything." The color drained from her face, and she looked down, her hands shaking as they fidgeted with the edge of the table. For the first time in weeks, she didn't have anything to say. No excuses, no deflections. Just silence. "How long?" I demanded, my voice breaking. "How long have you been cheating my best friend behind my back?" She flinched at the harshness of my words, but I didn't care. She deserved every bit of it. 6 months, she whispered, her voice barely audible. 6 months. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut all over again. 6 months of lies, of sneaking around, of watching them act like nothing was wrong while they were both stabbing me in the back. I couldn't breathe. My chest was tight, my head spinning. "How could you do this?" I choked out, my voice thick with pain. "How could you lie to me for that long? I trusted you, Amanda. I loved you." She started crying then, real tears spilling down her cheeks. "I never wanted to hurt you," she sobbed. "I didn't mean for it to happen. It just got out of control." Out of control. I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. "That's what you're going with? You didn't mean for it to happen." She wiped her eyes, trying to compose herself, but I could see the guilt written all over her face. "It started when Eric and I were spending more time together," she admitted, her voice shaking. "It was never supposed to be like this. I swear." I leaned against the counter, my head spinning with anger and disbelief. "So, what then? You just fell into bed with him? Over and over again? Was I that easy to lie to?" "It wasn't just about the sex, Nate," she whispered, her eyes filled with guilt and something else, something I didn't want to see. I cut her off, my voice cold. "Don't you dare say you love him. She froze, her face crumpling as more tears poured down her cheeks. I don't know what I feel anymore, she sobbed. I'm sorry. I never wanted to lose you. It was like she had driven a knife straight into my chest. She didn't even know what she felt. I had given her everything, my love, my trust, my life, and in return, she had destroyed everything we built together for a man I thought was my brother. You already lost me, Amanda, I said quietly, my voice hollow. The minute you decided to lie, to cheat, you lost me. For the first time, I saw real panic in her eyes. She reached out for me, but I stepped back. I couldn't let her touch me. Not after everything she'd done. Nate, please, she begged, her voice breaking. We can fix this. We can work through it. I love you, I swear I do. I shook my head, laughing bitterly. You don't know what love is. The words hung in the air, thick with finality. Amanda collapsed into the chair, sobbing uncontrollably, but I couldn't feel anything anymore. I was numb, hollow, like everything inside me had been drained away. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, out of the house, away from her. There was nothing left to say. A week passed after that confrontation. It felt like I was living in a fog, my mind caught between anger, sadness, and disbelief. I spent those days in a daze, barely able to function. The house was cold and empty, Amanda had moved into a hotel for the time being, and we hadn't spoken since that night. Then one morning, I got a call from Eric. My blood boiled at the sight of his name flashing on my phone. I thought about ignoring it, but a part of me needed to hear what he had to say. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe I just wanted to hear him admit how much of a coward he was. Either way, I answered. What do you want, Eric? I said, my voice hard, barely holding back the rage. Nate, I needed to tell you something, he said, his voice sounding small and broken, a far cry from the confident guy I once called my best friend. Jenna knows. I told her everything. I sat up, surprised but not entirely shocked. Jenna had always struck me as someone who knew more than she let on, but I never imagined Eric would come clean on his own. And? I asked coldly. What now? She forgave me, he said, his voice cracking with emotion. I don't know how, but she did. I told her about everything, how it started, what happened. I thought she was going to leave me, but she didn't. She said she wants to work through it. My stomach churned. I didn't understand how someone could forgive that kind of betrayal. I didn't know if I could have done the same in her shoes. But then again, everyone handles pain differently. Jenna had chosen her path, but I couldn't help but feel a sharp pang of disgust. And what about Amanda? I asked, my voice flat. Eric hesitated. I'm done with her, he said after a moment. I told her it's over. I can't keep this going. I need to fix things with Jenna. I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. So, you're just going to walk away from her? After everything you two did, you're just done now that you've been caught? He didn't respond right away, and I could hear the guilt in his silence. It's not like that, he said quietly. I made a mistake, Nate. A huge one. I never should have done it. But you did, I snapped, feeling the anger bubbling up again. You both did. Eric sighed heavily. I'm sorry, Nate. For everything. I know that doesn't mean much now, but I am. Yeah, well, sorry doesn't fix the damage, does it? I hung up, not wanting to hear any more apologies or excuses. Amanda had been left with nothing. Eric had bailed on her, just like that. And now? She was alone. I wasn't sure how I felt about it. There was a part of me that felt a sick sense of satisfaction, but another part that felt sad. We had spent years building a life together, and now it was all gone, crumbled to dust. After Eric's call, I decided I couldn't go through this alone anymore. I found a therapist, a guy named Dr. Harris. It was my first time seeing a psychologist, and I wasn't sure what to expect. The first few sessions felt awkward, like I was just dumping all my pain on a stranger. But slowly, piece by piece, I started to unravel everything. The anger, the hurt, the betrayal, it was all sitting inside me like a ticking bomb, and Dr. Harris helped me understand it. He didn't try to sugarcoat anything or tell me it was all going to be okay. Instead, he helped me process the reality of it. The reality that Amanda had betrayed me, that Eric had betrayed me, and that I couldn't control their actions. All I could control was how I moved forward. It's not about forgiving them, he said in one session. It's about releasing the hold this has on you. You don't have to let this define you. And that stuck with me. For so long, I had let their betrayal consume me, but with Dr. Harris's help, I started to find a way out of the darkness. Slowly but surely, I was able to breathe again, to see a future that didn't revolve around the pain they'd caused me. Meanwhile, Amanda's life was falling apart. Eric had given her up, and without me, she had nowhere to go. After our divorce was finalized, she had to move out of the house, our house. She begged me to let her stay, to give her time to figure things out, but I couldn't. Not after everything that had happened. I couldn't let her stay in the home we'd built together, a home now filled with lies. She had no family nearby, and with her reputation at work taking a hit after the affair came to light, her options were limited. She ended up crashing at a friend's place for a while, but even that fell through. One evening, I got a text from her. "I'm sorry for everything. I don't know what to do anymore. I have nowhere to go. Please, Nate, help me." I stared at the message for a long time, feeling a wave of conflicting emotions wash over me. Part of me wanted to help her, to be the guy who always took care of things. But the other part of me, the part that had learned through therapy that I needed to take care of myself first, knew that wasn't my responsibility anymore. I didn't respond. She had made her choices, and now she had to live with the consequences. The divorce left her with little. She didn't get the house, and without a steady place to stay, she was scrambling to keep her life together. It was like watching someone slowly sink, but I couldn't save her. I wouldn't. For the first time in months, I felt a strange sense of peace. Not happiness, but a calm acceptance that this chapter of my life was over. Amanda had lost everything, her lover, her home, her stability. And while part of me still felt the sting of betrayal, I realized that I was finally free from the weight of her lies. I was moving on. And she was left with nothing but the mess she'd created.